If you want to hear how the original 1933 Invisible Man secretly appears in this 2020 reimagining, then stick around to the end of this video. Oh, yeah, I'm over here. Our story begins at 3:42 in the morning as Cecilia wakes up to try to escape from Adrian's prison-like estate. One of the first things she does is turn his security camera towards the bedroom so that she can keep an eye on him rather than the other way around. I think it's kind of interesting how she has this strategy of using Adrian's technology against him from the very beginning, and it isn't until later until she realizes how to fully take advantage of that idea. 2 weeks after escaping, she is still super paranoid. And at that point, we don't know why. We don't know that Adrian was this optics technology mastermind. But there are clues, like Cecilia painting over her webcam, the mechanical sounds she hears at night, and later, flashes of light, which we find out to be Adrian taking photos of her. Part of his plan to make her go crazy. She also receives mail, which informs her of Adrian's will reading at an address that nobody is supposed to know that she's at, which doesn't make sense until we find out that Adrian is using the suits to stalk her. Adrian's full name, by the way, is Adrian Griffin, which is a slight nod to Jack Griffin, the scientist who learned how to make himself invisible and became the original Invisible Man. Cecilia's name, on the other hand, is a feminine version of the name Cecil, which is derived from the Latin word meaning blind, seeing as how she can't see Adrian. There are also a lot of examples of the camera angle suddenly cutting to a wide shot taken from another room, and I think that this is supposed to be Adrian's point of view as he's sneaking around the house and spying on her. And one more note on those mechanical sounds that she hears, the Invisible Man doesn't really have a signature sound like some of the other classic Universal monsters. I mean, you can't have him growl like the Wolfman or hiss like Dracula, because that would be ridiculous. So it's cool how they found a sound that fits the sci-fi reimagining of the story and also is still really creepy. When Cecilia is escaping, we see her Cal Poly architecture sweater, and later she interviews for a job at an architectural firm. The characters have fitting career choices for their roles in the story. Architecture represents privacy. It's the idea of putting up walls and shielding yourself from the gaze of the outside world. And optics technology represents the invasion of privacy. People like Adrian are suppliers for paparazzi. And in our world today, technology companies are seen as leeches for data and are often criticized for their misleading privacy policies. So there's some social commentary going on here, which if you're gonna remake a classic movie and bring it back into modern times, it's always nice to see that there's actually a reason for that update. After Cecilia escapes, she's staying at James's house, and I noticed him wearing a shirt that says Prestige Records 1949. The year may be a reference to the release day of The Invisible Man Appears, which was a Japanese adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel The Invisible Man, which is what the original film was based on. It's also a Japanese restaurant where Cecilia and Emily later have their reconciliation meeting, though that may be a coincidence. Hard to say for sure. But there's a bigger reference to the original Invisible Man nested inside of James's house. Cecilia is sleeping in the same room as the daughter, Sydney, and her dream is to go to fashion school, so her room is filled with clothing of her own design. As you might expect, there's a mannequin in the room, and it's wearing this one hat, and if I remember correctly, it's wearing sunglasses too. This is a big Easter egg because the mannequin is basically dressed up like the Invisible Man from the original movie. It actually kind of confused me when I first saw it on screen because I thought we were seeing the monster for the first time, and it took me a minute to realize that it was an actual mannequin. I'm sure most audiences who aren't familiar with the 1933 film didn't have that issue though. There would be another big reference to that original movie later, but in the meantime there were some more contemporary references as well. The blanket pulling scene pays homage to The Conjuring. And when Cecilia spreads coffee beans all over the floor to try to catch the Invisible Man's footsteps, it's very reminiscent of Paranormal Activity, where the character Katie spreads flour on the floor to try to record the invisible entity's footsteps.
Footsteps in, but there's no footsteps out.
Oh, God.
I think that the director of The Invisible Man, Leigh Whannell, put in these connections because he's friends with James Wan, who directed The Conjuring, and Oren Peli, who directed Paranormal Activity. In fact, Whannell's directorial debut was Insidious Chapter 3. Excellent movie, and that film was produced by Wan and Peli. Adrian messes with Cecilia's life and makes her question her own sanity. Things get really crazy when he drugs her and she passes out during her job interview. She ends up in the hospital, and in the hallway, there's another patient who's completely wrapped in bandages, which is a clever reference to, once again, the original Invisible Man, where he hides his invisibility by entirely wrapping himself up in bandages. The scene where he reveals himself, or I guess does the opposite of that, shows himself removing these bandages and is considered to be the most iconic scene in the movie.
I'll show you who I am and what I am. Look. He's all eaten away. Huh? How do you like that, eh?
After Cecilia confirms that Adrian is stalking her by finding the phone, knife, and photographs in the attic, she goes back to Adrian's fortress of a house, and strangely, the dog is still there. Another clue that he's still living there. I imagine when he faked his suicide, he left the dog to his brother as not to raise suspicion, and then had him return to the house, where nobody would find out that he's still living there because of the huge walls that surround the place. Speaking of the brother, let's fast forward a little bit to when Cecilia is in the psych ward after being framed for killing her sister by Adrian. His brother informs Cecilia that he'll be withholding the money from the will because she committed a crime, and she basically figures out that he's in on the whole operation. She calls him a jellyfish version of Adrian because he has no spine. Because I've seen more spine jellyfish, seen more guts in 11-year-old kids. No, but okay, maybe it's just my emo Abraham Lincoln sideshowing, but the more I think about it, the more I think that this could actually be a reference to that song by Brand New. I mean, think about it. The main chorus of the song is "Everyone's caught on to everything you do." Adrian has manipulated Cecilia for a long time, but nobody knew the extent of how badly he controlled her until she escaped and exposed his behavior. Then there's also that line, "Don't apologize, I hope you choke and die." And at the end of the movie, Adrian tries to make up with her, and she ends up using the invisibility suit to cut his throat, and he chokes and dies. So there's that. Leigh Whannell is from Australia, so I don't know how familiar he would be with the Long Island emo scene, but one thing he's probably familiar with is aquatic life, because Australia is regarded as one of the world's top scuba destinations. I noticed later in the movie that Sydney has a jellyfish shirt, and that got me thinking again about Cecilia calling Adrian's brother a jellyfish. Now, in Australia, there's a creature known as the irukandji jellyfish, and they're considered dangerous because they're venomous, and they can make themselves invisible, or at least very close to invisible. And this fits perfectly because Adrian's brother is later discovered to also be using the invisibility suit to help Adrian with his scheme.
Honey! What? Where's my super suit?
He's a toxic person with the ability to go invisible. In this case, instead of divers off the coast being the victims, it's a seemingly endless amount of cops who just seem to keep spawning and getting killed in that one hallway. What's going on over here? What, are they in the roof? How are you gonna spawn in this inside the roof? Yeah. So the story ends with, as I mentioned, Cecilia killing Adrian, claiming it wasn't her, and getting James to go along with her story, somewhat reluctantly. She steals the invisibility suit for herself, because I guess these things have really good battery life, and in doing so seems to set up the sequel, The Invisible Woman. I'm guessing that she's gonna start using the suit for herself and slowly start to become the villain, and James is gonna have to be the one to try to stop her. And I'm all for it. I think there's a lot more that can be covered with this concept, and with smart characters like these, it should be a lot of fun. Of course, I'll be covering it here on CZsWorld if that does happen, but until then, click the video on the left and go ahead and subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week. Ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.
Get out!